There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch, Michael by there.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon, retired NYPD sergeant with 27 years of service. I mean, this story going on overnight is almost too hard to believe. You know, I just look at this story, and of course, I'm referring to the FBI raid at 9 o'clock in the morning of Trump's Mar-a-Lago estates into his office, and apparently with a search warrant, breaking into his safe to collect some documents. Supposedly there was some cooperation agreement going on between Trump's attorneys and the Department of Justice. I don't know. We're not privy to that information. But if that is true, why are they conducting a hit team with the FBI? This is the second or third time that the FBI has been weaponized by one political party against another one. Very bad look for the FBI. I think American citizens are losing faith in the FBI, and it's looking like a lot of corruption, and that's a bad look. I mean, that's what banana republics have. That's one branch of government, one party against another, using a law enforcement institution that used to have the highest level of reputation among American citizens. No longer. I think when you say those three letters FBI, it's been tainted. We had under Trump, we had Strzok, Comey, and McCabe. All three of them, in my mind, potentially could have got arrested for their actions. Of course, none of them did. I think that also has American citizens shaking their head. Double, triple, quadruple standard. If other law enforcement agencies did what the FBI did, you can bet that they would be in federal prison right now. Just outrageous. The search this is from the New York Times, the search appears to signal a major escalation in the various investigations into the Trump presidency. Former President Donald Trump said on Monday that the FBI had searched his Palm Beach, Florida home and had broken open a safe, an account signaling a major escalation in the various investigations into the final stages of his presidency. The search, according to multiple people familiar with the investigation, appeared to be focused on material that Mr. Trump had brought with him to Mar-a-Lago, his private club and residence when he left the White House. Those boxes contained many pages of classified documents, according to a person familiar with their contents. Mr. Trump delayed returning 15 boxes of material requested by the officials with the National Archives for many months, only doing so when there became a threat of action to retrieve them. The case was referred to the Justice Department by the archives early this year. The search marked the latest remarkable turn in the long-running investigations into Mr. Trump's actions before, during, and after his presidency, and even as he weighs announcing another candidacy for the White House. It came as the Justice Department has stepped up its separate inquiry into Mr. Trump's effort to remain in office after his defeat at the polls in 2020 election, and as the former president also faces an accelerating criminal inquiry in Georgia and civil actions in New York. Mr. Trump has long cast the FBI as a tool of the Democrats who have been out to get him, and the search set off a furious reaction among his supporters in the Republican Party and on the far right of American politics. Representative Kevin McCarthy of California, the Republican leader in the House, suggested that he intended to investigate Attorney General Merrick Garland if Republicans took control of the House in November. The FBI would have needed to convince a judge that it had probable cause that a crime had been committed and that agents might find evidence at Mar-a-Lago to get a search warrant. Proceedings with a search on a former president's home would almost surely have required sign-off from top officials at the Bureau and the Justice Department. The search, however, does not mean prosecutors have determined that Mr. Trump committed a crime. An FBI representative declined to comment, as did Justice Department officials. The FBI Director Christopher Wray was appointed by Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump was in New York area at the time of the search. Another day in paradise, he said Monday night during a telephone rally for Sarah Palin, who's running for a congressional seat in Alaska. This is a very shaky situation. I mean, when you think about what's going on here, I just don't know. How do you use a law enforcement agency to go after a former president when the Justice Department already has a case and there's cooperation going on between attorneys? It seems, I know we overuse the word fugazi, but it seems extremely fugazi that they're doing this. It doesn't seem right. And it undermines people's faith in the Justice Department and undermines people's faith in the FBI.
Former FBI agent Chris Swecker, he is an attorney in Charlotte, North Carolina. Chris, and joining the conversation all morning long, Fox and Friends First co-host Todd Pyro, also an attorney, and Laffer Tangler Investments Chief Investment Officer and CEO Nancy Tangler. Good to see you all. Chris, based on your experience, would Christopher Wray have had to sign off on this raid, or at least know about it, along with the Attorney General Merrick Garland of the United States?
Without a doubt. The word that comes to mind is unprecedented. This has never happened. I mean, even for minor public officials, if there were a search warrant being executed, say in a congressman's office, like it happened when I was the head of the FBI's criminal division, you would have to jump through dozens of hoops: review by FBI lawyers, approval at the director level, review by DOJ attorneys, approval at the attorney general level, analysis across the board, an affidavit that probably is in the dozens of pages. And this is a type of action that will have to get scrutiny at the highest levels. I will say this, Dagan. I mean, the Justice Department has always been political. The Attorney General is a political appointee. I have never seen, you don't see the FBI getting involved in politics until very recently, over the last couple of years. And as I hear from former colleagues and even judges and police chiefs across the country, they're scratching their heads on this one.
Did you hear from former colleagues or even people who still work in the FBI last night after the raid was disclosed?
I've heard from quite a few people.
What were they saying?
Well, it's everything from this country is lost to what's going on at the FBI. And I have a hard time explaining this to them because, even if there was a violation here, it's a de minimis violation. And you would have to be concerned about the optics and the politics involved. And honestly, Dagan, the squeeze is not worth the juice that would come out of it. So to raid a former president's house for a de minimis violation, not treason, not bribery, not corrupt actions on the part of the president, but retention of supposedly classified documents, that you just wouldn't do it. It wouldn't have happened during the 24 years that I was at the FBI.
This is something that Andy McCarthy, our former federal prosecutor, said in relation to the abuses within the FBI with the FISA warrants against Trump campaign official Carter Page. He said, when you abuse the power given to you, to say the FBI and the Justice Department, when you abuse that power, people demand ultimately that power is taken away from you. And that makes the United States less safe. That if you abuse powers used to investigate terrorists and those powers disappear, the United States will open itself up to harm. And that's, again, if this power is abused against President Trump, it opens the floodgates of additional abuses and the FBI not able to protect the United States of America.
Yeah, the FBI needs the cooperation of the American public. They need the credibility. We need the FBI. However, when 50% of the American public, or somewhere in that range, don't trust the FBI, as you say, our national security is weakened. Our criminal law enforcement at that level is weakened, and without all that, the FBI is not the agency we need it to be.
Chris, during your time in the FBI, this is Todd Pyro, by the way, co-host of Fox and Friends First. Great to chat with you as always. During your time in the FBI, how many National Archives raids did you conduct?
None that I can remember. I mean, I recall an instance where we wanted to search a congressman's office up on Capitol Hill, and were denied that by the Justice Department. This is a Democratic congressman, Republican Attorney General. We were denied it until they refused to comply with a long negotiation and a grand jury subpoena. And then when we did conduct the search, all of the take from that search had to be put in escrow with a federal judge. We couldn't put our hands on it until they had reviewed it to cull out all the material that had nothing to do with the search warrant that we had executed.
Lynette O'Connell, disappointed you are so partisan, referring to me, no doubt. This is rule of law, not politics. Oh, really? Why did the FBI admit that they didn't go after Hunter Biden, and they made up a narrative saying it was Russian disinformation? They had probable cause there. I cannot help but believe the FBI is partisan and their buttons are being pushed by one party over another. So let's not be disappointed. I'm disappointed in the FBI because it's absolutely partisan.
Even though we were very precise and only took one or two things. So this is extraordinary. It would have to go through many levels of review. And I go back to the de minimis part of this. Mm-hmm. If this were part of the January 6th review, investigation, and it involved some concrete evidence of, say, treason, for example, I'm speaking hypothetically, I could almost see it. But this is retention of classified information, allegedly. This is de minimis. And you really have to weigh out that optic of the FBI 30 agents raiding a former president's home. And during my time as head of the criminal division and the cyber division and the number 3 position at the Bureau, I'm pretty sure we would not have approved that at any level.
Chris, would you expect people to resign within the FBI if you're an agent and said, I'm not participating in this?
Yeah, what I've been looking for quite a while now, under Comey and now under the current director, is for them to push back at the Department of Justice when things like this come up, to have the courage to push back and say, nah, we're not doing this. I mean, the reason the FBI director has a 10-year term was intended to remove the FBI from politics. DOJ is a political agency at the top, across the whole strata of their hierarchy at the top levels. We know that. That's always been the case. But the FBI is supposed to be apolitical. And I can honestly say, in my 24 years with the Bureau, I never saw a political decision made, at least that I was aware of. And I was at very high levels. So, to go back to your question, Dagan, I really want to see a circumstance or an instance where the FBI has pushed back and said, no, we're not going to be used in this fashion.
Chris Wecker, thank you so much for being here this morning, always. Terrific to see you. We'll see you again very soon, I hope.
Folks, trying to weigh this whole situation, this is a former president. He deserves a certain level of respect and a presumption of innocence, and even going through his attorneys, say, to get these boxes of what they claim are top secret documents or secret documents. This is unprecedented that they go to get a search warrant and they raid his home. It's unprecedented, and I think that we have to look at it from that lens. You know, during the term of Comey, Strzok, and McCabe, I mean, Comey gave top secret documents to a Columbia University professor, not even someone in the government. That, to me, was arrestable. That an FBI agent is not allowed to do that, and he did it, and he got away with it. So, like, who's picking and choosing? The other thing is that everyone's making this big, a judge had to sign off on this. Are there not Democrat-leaning judges that signed off on the warrant to say there was probable cause? Probable cause, for folks that aren't in law enforcement, means, through the eyes of a reasonable person, has a crime been committed, and is the person who's the subject of the warrant the person who committed this crime? So a judge is saying a crime was committed if he's signing this warrant. Signing a warrant against a former president. It's no small thing. And then the other question that I find outrageous, does Merrick Garland know about this? The AG, the Attorney General, and of course, the head of the FBI, Mr. Wray, was he fully informed about this? To think that they didn't know or don't know about this is laughable, And I just think, someone's pulling the strings on the FBI. And to me, it's rather disgusting, weaponizing a law enforcement agency is just, it's not the thing of a democracy. It really isn't. It's pretty pathetic. It's pretty disgusting. Let's see what
Tonight that the Mar-a-Lago home of former President Donald Trump has been searched by the FBI. CNN and the New York Times reporting that the search appears to be focused on 15 boxes of documents that the former president took with him to Mar-a-Lago. The Justice Department reported to be looking for classified information within those 15 boxes. Now, regular viewers of this show know that I have been critical of the left-leaning media, who I believe have taken nuggets of information about the January 6th investigation, and rather than providing sober legal analysis, have advocated for the former president to be indicted. Rather than telling us what's happening, they've often been telling us what they wish was happening. And tonight, the politicized media has been going nuts with often biased coverage, some of it just inaccurate. We'll talk about that later. But first, let's just have some straight talk about this. Bottom line, tonight's development is very significant. This isn't the home of former DOJ official Jeffrey Clark or the phone of Trump lawyer John Eastman. This is the home of the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. This raid must have been approved by the Attorney General himself. It must have been. Legally, it means that they showed a judge that there was probable cause that a crime was committed and there could be evidence of the crime at the home. Donald Trump, who wasn't at his home at the time of the raid, he actually broke the news himself, saying in a statement, quote, "These are dark times for our nation as my beautiful home Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida is currently under siege, raided and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before." Now, that's certainly true. This is unprecedented. No former president has had the Justice Department get a warrant to search their primary residence. And as you'd expect, the former president was seething over it. In a statement, he said, quote, "After working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. It is prosecutorial misconduct, the weaponization of the justice system, and an attack by the radical left Democrats who desperately don't want me to run for president in 2024. Now, I have been a major skeptic that the DOJ would indict Donald Trump, in part because I believe that the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, just doesn't want to go there with a former president. For example, he refused to indict Trump aides Dan Scavino and Mark Meadows for contempt of Congress, even though the January 6th committee referred it and asked the DOJ to do it. But this is a big step that could change a lot, but maybe not in connection with the investigation of January 6th or even that fake elector scheme that's being investigated. But look, if there is any indictment of the former president, that would be a cataclysmic event. So joining us now for some more straight talk is former federal prosecutor Renato Mariotti, who, like me, has expressed skepticism of some of the coverage of the investigation up to now. and Jay Town, a former U.S. attorney appointed during the Trump administration. Thank you both for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, Renato, let me start with you. How significant do you think this is?
It's very significant. I don't think you need to be an attorney to know that if the FBI executes a search warrant at your home, that's a very serious matter. And if one of my clients told me that the FBI had raided his home that morning, I would tell him that he's likely to be charged with the crime.
And yeah, go ahead.
No, I will say one wrinkle here is we are seeing some reporting that this is related to the classified documents issue, not the fake elector scheme, as you mentioned a moment ago. What's unusual about that is usually the mishandling of classified information in itself is not the basis for criminal charges that the DOJ would bring, unless those classified materials are used to obstruct justice or are used to be transferred to a third party or something like that. That just suggests to me that there must be some plus factor here, because I highly doubt that Merrick Garland is taking this unprecedented step. And I don't think without belief that this investigation is going somewhere.
Yeah,
I just have the.
I agree with that. Jay Town, do you agree with it?
I do. I mean, as Renato said, the unauthorized removal or retention of classified materials, I mean, that's a misdemeanor. 18 U.S.C. 1924 for those keeping score at home. And so there must be a plus factor here beyond just, boxes of information that may have, made it in the two guys in a truck. This has got to be the FBI and the Department of Justice signaling. This is a breathtaking moment. This is historic. This is just like you said, Dan, this isn't Jeffrey Clark's cell phone being seized. This is a former president of the United States and his residence. And as you correctly pointed out, in the search warrant, the affiant, whoever it was, had to convince a judge not only that a crime had been committed, probable cause there was a crime committed, but that there was evidence of it, and that evidence was at the president's private residence. Now, you can't just say it is home, because he has several homes. They at least believed that it was in Mar-a-Lago. So there is a very specific investigation going on at DOJ involving the president of the United States. That is something that up until today, I didn't even believe was happening, that there was any investigation at all.
Right.
And you don't search the president's home unless you feel like you have a prosecution in your cargo pocket ready to go.
Well, and it seems that all of us then are in agreement that there's got to be something more here. That yes, this reporting, because we're relying on reporting from the New York Times and a couple of others who are basically saying that this is the heart of what it's about. But it is hard to believe, and I'm going to read from an article that was in the website Lawfare, which I think does a very good job of digging deep on a lot of legal issues, where they pointed out that in the past, George H.W. Bush's administration destroyed telephone logs and email records that were relevant to an ongoing congressional investigation into whether Bush had ordered State Department to search Bill Clinton's passport records. They talked about how the counsel to Bill Clinton advised employees of the risk of disclosure under this law, which led some to keep diaries and start using private email accounts, et cetera. The point being that when it comes to this particular issue of the Presidential Records Act and maintaining that kind of information, it is hard to believe that they would be at Mar-a-Lago just for that. And I think that we're all in agreement. So I'm going to now, and I'm going to get a little legal here because I think it's very important, because you're not getting context on a lot of the other networks as to what's really going on here. You're getting a lot of, I think, in certain cases, wishful thinking. So I want to talk about one statute that could be relevant here, a different one than you mentioned, Jay, which is 18 U.S. Code 2071. Whoever willfully and unlawfully conceals, removes, mutilates, obliterates, or destroys, or attempts to do so with intent to do so, and carries away any record, proceeding, map, book, et cetera, or in any public office with any judicial or public office of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. There has been a lot of coverage as of late about whether Donald Trump was actually taking documents, ripping them up and flushing them down a toilet. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why now? What happened today? What happened in the last 2 to 3 weeks that has suddenly made the Presidential Records Act front and center. Renato?
I think that the FBI had to have information that there was evidence right now at this time at his residence. In other words, it had to be fresh. They were not going to go and get a warrant based on evidence that they had about what had happened back in 2021 when Trump left office. Okay. So to me, there had to be something fresh here. And, I think James Comey's testimony to Congress regarding prosecution of classified information was very on point, in which he said that generally what they're looking for a prosecution is something like obstruction of justice, willfully transferring that material to a third party, something like that, not just merely mishandling it.
Right.
And so that's the sort of thing that I would be, looking for here. If I was a defense attorney on Trump's team trying to figure out what this could be about, I would be asking him, did you try to destroy these documents in some way? Were you trying to hide evidence in some fashion? Were you transferring these documents to other people to aid in some other venture or matter that you had? I mean, that's the sort of thing that I would be asking him.
Jay, what do you make of that?
I agree with that. And by third party, I mean, typically when we're dealing with classified information, we're talking about a foreign national or talking about traditional sort of espionage. But in the context of domestic terrorism, there could be information where, at least prosecutors believe that whatever was taken is being shared with different groups. I'll tell you that, I think that Cipollone recently testified before the grand jury, or at least gave some documents up. And so that might be that fresh information that Renato was mentioning. That is important. And we are kind of bumping up against sort of that 90-day policy where DOJ doesn't like to serve warrants of any kind when we start coming up against elections. So we're sort of on the outskirts of that right now, before the midterms. And so maybe that's what sort of pressured the FBI into moving this week.
Maybe, but I hope it was more than that, right? Because serving a warrant on the former president of the United States is a huge deal. I know that some people want to pretend like, no one's above the law. And of course that's true. But the reality is when you're talking about the former president of the United States, the standard has to be higher by the Department of Justice. It just has to be. And in this case, I've got to believe, or at least I'll say, I've got to hope that it was, because as we sit here and talk about the Presidential Records Act, and I did a bunch of research to appear on this show tonight about some of the history of the Presidential Records Act, the more I thought about it, the more I just kept coming back to, it's got to be more than this. It just can't just be about presidential records and storing 15 boxes at Mar-a-Lago or not.
Dan, I don't believe that they would execute a search warrant on the President of the United States if an indictment wasn't coming down the pike very soon. It's just too high visibility of a matter to then crawl back into your hole and not comment on ongoing investigations for another year and a half. This is not what happened today. It's imminent.
Let me ask you, Renato, do you think that there will be any comment from the Department of Justice? Meaning, typically, in almost every case, what we hear is it's an ongoing investigation. We can't comment. Because it's the former president of the United States, is it possible that the Department of Justice will issue a statement on this?
No, the only kind of statement I would expect, Dan, is something like, we confirm that law enforcement activity took place at a particular address, something along those lines. What we have seen thus far is some reporting that off the record, they're saying that they're not denying that there was a warrant executed, something along those lines, just clarifying what you would know if you had binoculars and was watching the home at that time, and nothing more than that.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Go to News.
So, folks, a pretty good analysis from News Nation and Dan Abrams. However, they don't know what happened either. And these are experienced attorneys, but they for sure don't know specifically what occurred. And everyone is guessing. And are we going to get an answer from the Justice Department? Who knows? You think Merrick Garland is going to be transparent and tell the public what this case is about? Or the FBI Director Wray? Will they come clean and say, oh, this is what this is about? No, I doubt it. So right now, all these news agencies are really just guessing. It's a good guess about what has occurred. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime from a law enforcement perspective, please go on our YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. It's free. Give us a thumbs up and ring that bell. If you want to support us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And if you want to join our YouTube family, you see the folks in the chat in the green font. They support us also financially once a month. And we have 5 different levels. So this is a little bit crazy, I think. Some of the things, I'm going to just play something from CBS so we get the perspective of one of the mainstream stations that's not conservative. News Nation has a reputation of being conservative. So let me play a little bit from a station that's not conservative.
Developing story.
This is the scene in front of Trump Tower this morning. A small group of Trump supporters holding up this Trump 2024 sign. And others not in favor of the former president, calling for his arrest. It comes after he was seen here leaving Trump Tower in Midtown yesterday evening. Moments after, the former president put out a lengthy statement claiming federal agents broke into his safe at his primary residence of Mar-a-Lago, with the former president saying in part, quote, after working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate.
What we don't have is very much transparency from the Justice Department or the FBI.
CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett on CBS Mornings today speaking on what this could mean moving forward.
The judicial authorities, with all the relevant facts, believe there's probable cause that a crime was committed. But in the larger political context, this is a dangerous and unstable moment in American history. This is now a conversation about weaponizing the justice system at the federal level.
Sources tell CBS News the FBI was looking for documents related to the Presidential Records Act. The law requires official records from the presidency to be saved in the National Archives. Failure to comply is potentially a violation of federal law. Back in February, the National Archives asked the Department of Justice to investigate Trump's handling of White House records. It came after officials retrieved 15 boxes of records from Mar-a-Lago that were meant for preservation under federal law. The papers included some classified material brought to the residence after the Trump administration departed the White House. The former president's son, Eric Trump, points the finger at the current administration.
This came from one place and one building, and that is the White House in Washington, D.C. They want to attack a guy who they view as his greatest threat, is Biden's greatest threat.
White House sources tell CBS News the West Wing was not notified ahead of when this search warrant was conducted. We're also hearing that this has nothing to do with the January 6th committee's investigation. Reporting here in Midtown.
You know, one of the things that I find outrageous is the denial by the president, the executive branch of the government, that they knew anything about this. That is that's not even remotely believable. You know, it's not remotely believable that they knew nothing about it. That if you don't know nothing about it, you shouldn't be the president. Outrageous that you could even say that. And anyone, American people that believe that, then, you know, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. Just totally outrageous that, oh, the president knew nothing. Will you stop? Pathetic, just really, really pathetic that you could try to sell that crap. Just outrageous. You know, one of the big questions I have here, was this done to prevent Trump from running in 2024? And I think I know as an American citizen that they fear Trump. They fear Trump as an opponent. I personally don't think that Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic Party's candidate. I think he's too far gone as far as cognitively. I don't think he's going to be their candidate. But was this weaponization of the FBI and this taking 15 boxes of what they say is highly classified information or papers, was this done to prevent Trump from running in 2024? I mean, he could be so bogged down in defending himself and his lawyers defending him that he could not have time, or maybe they could even prevent him from running. And how about what's coming up in November? The midterm elections, was this done to put a huge smokescreen on the midterm elections? I don't know. I don't know the answer. And everyone that is being interviewed on this, whether it's an attorney from the left, an attorney from the right, attorney from the middle, former FBI, no one knows yet what actually happened. No one's privy. The only people that know what actually occurred, why this search warrant was issued, whether it could result in an arrest, because a search warrant, the level of the level needed to get a search warrant is probable cause. So there has to be probable cause that a crime was committed, and the judge must sign it. And many news stations are making a huge deal out of that. But in my mind, they could get a friendly Democrat judge to sign it. It's been done before. Look at those FISA warrants. They're an absolute joke. People were signing and they didn't even have the legal level of suspicion to sign it. So let's not act like getting a warrant for this is, this high level. A judge signed it. Well, the FISA warrant was directly signed by a judge too. So let's not act like this is holier than thou. It's not. And this is sort of disgraceful. This is what makes the citizenry doubt our government and really question our government and question how they're using a law enforcement agency to go after somebody to the advantage of another. It just is horrible.
I want to bring in Bill Cunningham. He is a radio talk show host. If you have heard him in Cincinnati, he's with WLW. He's joining me by phone because, as I said, this is late breaking. Bill, can you hear me?
Ashley, I can. Is everything well now where you are?
Everything's pretty, en fuego, as we like to say in the news business when a story like this breaks, during prime time. This is big news. As I mentioned this word, I'll say it again because I think it bears repeating early and often. This is seismic. The United States president does not have his personal home searched through unannounced by the FBI unless people have crossed every T, dotted every I, and they know exactly what they're looking for. And a federal judge does not sign off on warrants like this unless it's very, very serious. And they have listed very specifically what they're looking for, why they're looking for it, and I'm going to say this as blatant as I can, what crime they believe he has committed, and they've listed it on the warrant. So your thoughts on that, Bill?
We're going to have to see the affidavit exactly what underpins this. But imagine this, Ashley. 3 branches of government. We've had left-wing extremists trying to kill a sitting United States Supreme Court justice. We've had the United States Capitol overrun by right-wing rioters. And now we have the President of the United States and his personal home being, I use the term, ransacked by FBI agents, as your last guest indicated, posing perhaps not as FBI agents. They didn't have markings on them. And so we live in a time right now where at one point the conservative movement was moving toward Ron DeSantis. And I hope the Democrats know that they can't do this to the Trumpster and get away with it. There are people in America right now that want to walk out of their homes, fly their Trump flags, and actually show support for the president. Imagine Vladimir Putin would get rid of his opponents biologically. He would kill them. And now Joe Biden and Merrick Garland wants to kill the leadership of the opposition party politically on the eve of the next election. As you pointed out, in many states, we start voting in like 8 or 9 weeks. This thing's going to metastasize. And I thought there was that rule you talked about, Ashley, about not interfering with an election. What the heck does this do when the president doesn't have the right papers in the right drawer and 30 show up at about 9 o'clock in the morning, search for 9.5 hours for evidence of a crime? Are you kidding me? When you submitted an affidavit, and I was a federal law clerk, you would read the affidavit, maybe put someone under oath. I can't imagine, unless O.J. Simpson's murderers, there's evidence of that in that safe. There's no reason to do this. As you know, you have civil actions. You have replevant actions. You have subpoenas that could have been issued. And if there's some dispute the last 6 months, the last thing you want to do is imprison the leader of the opposition party and try the case, by the way, in front of a Washington, D.C. jury. Are you kidding me? They want the Donald to be
you know what, to that, Bill?
let off in shackles.
You know what? I will say this. This was a comment that former President Trump made. And I'll quote him, such an assault can only take place in third world countries. Sadly, America has become one of those countries. They even broke into my safe. And then he also made comments about Hillary Clinton as well. But I do have to ask you with what you say, the separation between the branches of government was elucidated with a comment from the White House that said it had not been notified about this. There was no heads up given to the Biden White House about this search. So do you think, well, let me ask the question. Do you think that the White House is lying?
Has the White House ever lied before? What are they doing to parents who go to school board meetings? What are they doing in the state of Idaho? Everywhere I look, I see Joe Biden's administration promising one thing and doing the exact opposite. Do I think Merrick Garland on his own, without the involvement of Joe Biden or Ron Klain, the chief of staff, do something this size? I don't think so. Of course, I'm not going to believe a darn word he says anyway. This reminds me of the Saturday Night Massacre, Archibald Cox and Richardson. This reminds me of a moment in American history. We're going to look back on it. January 6th, man, awful. Trying to assassinate Supreme Court justices, awful. Republican lawmakers shot at a baseball game by that idiot from Illinois. I'm sorry, seismic. But when you go to the president's home, Mar-a-Lago, and for 9.5 hours, you have specific things to find. You can't look for example, a piece of paper. If you're going to look for a piece of paper, you can't seize a car. So they have to go through all the records of this president, including personal communications and those covered by executive privilege. This thing is going to light up the country in ways we're going to forget about what happened with the Inflation Reduction Act, Ashley Banfield. This thing's going to energize the conservative movement like nothing before. The Congress is invaded. Supreme Court justices are hunted down. Now, President Trump is treated like a common criminal. I can't take it anymore.
Bill Cunningham is the host on WLW.
You know, folks, Bill Cunningham was just saying, Ashley Banfield asked him, do you think that Biden is lying about not knowing about this? 100%. If he doesn't know about this, he should be impeached for being incompetent and not knowing about an FBI raid of a former president. That does not pass the smell test. It's ridiculous. And, you know, Merrick Garland, I've seen him testify before Congress. There is no more experienced liar than Merrick Garland. He knew nothing about anything. He sounded like the guy who's the Homeland Security guy on the border. Knows nothing. Knows absolutely. If you don't know anything, you should be fired for not knowing anything, because that's incompetence.
Cincinnati radio host, well listened to. I will say this. It's been said by others that if this doesn't result in some kind of a conviction, that this will make a martyr out of President Trump, and it will, like Bill said, it will energize the Republican base ahead of the midterms and, of course, ahead of 2024 as well. Bill Cunningham, thank you for that. I have to squeeze in a quick break when we come back. Thank you for watching. Go to news.
Amazing. I mean, the big question that I have is, was this done to affect the midterm elections? Or, part B to that, was this done to prevent Trump from running in 2024? That is a question I have right now, because that's the midterms are right around the corner. So which is it? Was it done to prevent Trump from running in 2024, or was it done to have an effect on the midterm elections? What this might do, and they alluded to it, it may solidify Trump's base and wind up having more people come out to vote. And this could really be a red wave in the midterms. And I know there's some people in the chat right now who are anti-Trump, and I don't know why they're on this site specifically, but this is a huge story. It's a huge story, and unfortunately, it seems that there's a lot of corruption in our country right now. And did this always happen? I don't know. You go back in history, and the left will always point to Watergate. And then there's all kinds of, the right will point to Benghazi, Hillary's 35,000 emails that disappeared, her BlackBerries destroyed. You know, I'm sure there was a lot of things that Obama did that people pretend that Obama was cleaner than a hound's tooth, but yet he had some dirty stuff in his administration too. So every political party, they have these little mini scandals, but this is, it's crazy. Jules, Steven Crowder says to not do business with anyone that applauds this. They will come after you next. Yeah, it's sort of disgusting because it's like playing sports against someone who plays dirty. Do you want to play against them, or do you want to play against someone that plays clean and hard? I think that's what you want. Amy M. No, the left has been planning this communist revolution for 100 years. Robo Kathy, of course, they're terrified of the Don. He can't be bought. They tried. It didn't work. You know, I think that's a possibility also. Sylvia Cruz, you live under a rock if you think Biden was told afterwards. This kind of raid on a former president comes from the top. It has to be running him first. Use your brain. God help us all. Sylvia Cruz, I also submit to you that if it were possible that Biden didn't know about this, then that's gross incompetence, and he should be removed as president. If you honestly don't know about this, which I think is ridiculous to even suggest it, then that's even worse incompetence about admitting that you know about it. Just totally outrageous. Slim Hauser, it's political silence and assassination for all Americans. Sandra H., did you know the IRS has 500 million rounds of ammunition, currently purchasing more? Think about it. Oh, I don't know if that's true or not. Grace Green, no person is above the law, but the law has a duty to not abuse the Constitution. Law for corruption. Absolutely. Sifta, yes, indeed, Trump has power, and that is what this is all about. It's about stopping him from running in 2024. I don't disagree with you, Sifta. I think that's a real possibility that this could be for that reason. Folks, if you're looking for a good attorney in the New York metropolitan area, a good defense attorney, criminal defense attorney, then Joe Murray is your man. He's a retired NYPD police officer, and he's an outstanding attorney, former heavyweight boxer. You can reach Joe on his cell at 718-514-3855, or you can email him at joe@jmurray-law.com. His website is jmurray-law.com. Outstanding attorney, a friend of the show, and just a great human being. Folks, if you're looking to advertise on our show, we have some openings for folks that have a business and may want to purchase 10 or more ads that can be read over a sizable audience now. You can reach us at policeoffthecuff, the number one, not spelled out, the number one, at gmail.com. That's policeoffthecuff1@gmail.com. And we'll discuss rates and what you expect from the ad that we make for you. So this is a very very interesting case, and I would imagine that it's going to be in the news for the foreseeable future now, and we're going to be following it here on Police Off the Cuff.
Their search warrant. We don't know exactly what was in the search warrant, what the alleged information that the FBI gave to a federal magistrate to say we need to be able to go in to Mar-a-Lago. We don't know exactly what else the FBI is looking into. Does this have connections to the January 6th investigation is something that's a big question. The one hint we got, which was a big hint, in addition to Brian Enton's excellent reporting, is part of President Trump's statement where he talked sort of all about how things were unfair and he was being persecuted by the DOJ, and then went on to talk about Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails and how she destroyed classified information that was kept irresponsibly, potentially criminally, on her own email server, and she destroyed it after being subpoenaed by Congress. The fact that he said that in his statement leads you to believe that he knows, or at least thinks he knows, what potentially might be coming from the DOJ on this matter. And there's even a lot of Democrats right now, privately, not necessarily as many publicly, saying that if you are going to take this enormously unprecedented step of going and raiding the home of a former president, you got to have something more than the Presidential Records Act and a potential violation of that to cross this Rubicon that hasn't been done in the 250 plus years of the Republic.
So, I mean, when you think about it, and I know you said a lot there, the former President Trump has faced countless legal challenges. Of course, there's ongoing January 6th committee hearings, where the investigation there, the accusations of Russian collusion. He was cleared of any wrongdoing there. What happens if the suspicions around this particular raid don't stick?
It's a great question, and we would be wise to point out, as you just did, Adrian, that the initial reporting about so many issues surrounding President Trump has been breathless and largely factually incorrect. You pointed out the Russian collusion investigation as just one of the many times that so many on the left thought that this was a gotcha moment for President Trump, and there just quite wasn't a there. And it's an important question for all of those sort of celebrating this morning that President Trump has finally been raided by the FBI. If this all comes down to, hey, there were 15 boxes of classified data that were behind locked doors in Mar-a-Lago, which is a compound guarded 24 hours a day by the United States Secret Service, is that really that they are there? Now, you can argue that the law applies equally to everybody. That's true. But there's also proportionality that you have to take into account. And one really wonders what Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has now bought in terms of a problem, because he clearly almost certainly signed off on this search warrant. But now there are all eyes focused on him to justify this major move by the Department of Justice. And already, obviously, from the Republican side, is, okay, great, where is the raid on Hunter Biden's house? And when are we going to see that? And how do you, as the Attorney General, 90 days before the midterm elections, justify raiding a Republican president's house? And yet at the same time, we've heard so little about the Hunter Biden investigation. The Attorney General has now only upped the pressure, intensity, and spotlight on himself by a factor of somewhere between 10 and infinity.
Leland Vittert, thank you for putting things in perspective. You can watch On Balance with Leland tonight and every weeknight. It starts at 7 Eastern, 6 Central Time. Thank you for watching.
So, folks, there's so many questions to this. People in the chat saying, oh, how is this about crime? If you can't see that this case is about crime or peripherally about crime, it involves the FBI. It involves the Department of Justice. It involves the Attorney General, who no doubt signed off on this. And I know I've watched Merrick Garland testify before Congress, and he's definitely a liar. He pretends to know nothing about anything. If that's the case, again, you shouldn't have your job. If you don't know the major things that the Justice Department is doing under your watch, then something's incompetent about your leadership. And it's these are some of the things that we're facing here. But I think that we have to question the timing of this. Why is this happening? Right before the midterm elections. We have to question that. Why is this happening for a president, a couple of years before a presidential election? These are some of the things that we have to ask, some of the questions we have to ask. Yeah, there's a picture of Mar-a-Lago on the screen. A raid at Mar-a-Lago. It's hard really to wrap your head around it. Wonder why, what this is about, and how easily they did it, how easily they got probable cause from a judge, and again, as I said, people act as if it's so difficult to get a warrant based on probable cause. And, you know, they could get a friendly judge, which apparently they did. And he did sign off on it. I want to play something from CNN since they are recognized as more of a liberal station.
The first question, because, you know, for an outsider, you've spent a considerable amount of time as a biographer of Trump with him and with family members. What do you think is going through his mind and their minds?
Oh, I think they're delighted. This is a surprising answer, but I think that they've been planning for this for years. Donald Trump first did his reaction to the FBI, actually having his lawyer call them Gestapo and stormtroopers 50 years ago. So he's been prepared for this strategy all along. He issued a campaign-style commercial within hours. This was prepared in advance. So he's an expert at spinning everything into publicity. He believes all publicity is good publicity. And that hardcore Trump group, 35% of the electorate, is going to be electrified by this. I think he's having a good day, actually.
Alyssa, you see this as serious on many levels.
I do. If we're talking about it being vital national security documents, I don't think that we can forget that those, you know, even if it's top secret, that means it could pose a grave national security risk if it's in the wrong hands or made out into the public. This, I'm hoping, goes beyond simply not complying with some archiving laws, or DOJ just handed Donald Trump the Republican nominee and potentially the presidency. If it's seen as some sort of massive overreach and not something incredibly serious, this is a very good day for Donald Trump. And by the way, he knows how to play this up in his favor. He more or less broke this news. It was
He did break it.
It was,
He
I
did
believe,
break it.
yeah, a Florida-based reporter had something, but he was ready to go. And I've actually seen quite sort of aligned messaging among Republicans. This is, you know, a banana republic. This shouldn't happen. If they do it to the president, the FBI will do it to you. I think he's having a good day as of now. So I hope DOJ's buttoned up on this.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. The messaging from Republicans, they're seeing maybe benefit going into the midterms on this.
Unless the they is Ron DeSantis.
Well,
or anybody else who was planning on running for the Republican nomination in 2024. Look, this just happened. So the ramifications are still are mostly unknown. But in the short term, what it looks like is exactly what Alyssa said. I mean, I cannot tell you how many Republicans I have talked to who have said that just the political way that he handled this is vintage Trump. And for his short-term political goal, which is, if it is, in fact, to get the Republican nomination, kind of genius, because he has used all, I mean, look at the buzzwords he used in that statement: Occupy, raid. I mean, he basically said it was the deep state, which totally triggers and animates the people who not only who like him, but there was concern, according to people around Trump, that he was losing some mojo. He was having some trouble raising money, and this, he believes, turns it around.
Surprised? I mean, he has foreshadowed this every step of the way from Mueller. I mean, every investigation into him is a political hoax. We all knew that if DOJ did anything, that this was going to be the response. But I do agree with Alyssa that it will look bad if this is if this is dotting the I's, crossing the T's type of thing on a classified document concealing type of crime. But I suspect it's not. And I suspect it's not because, first of all, they got 15 boxes from there. They did discuss it in June. You have to
15 boxes in January.
in January, and then they
Earlier.
talked about what was, they had some discussions in June. I would guess, this is pure, speculation, but from my experience as a federal prosecutor, I would suspect that DOJ has very good information from a witness that there is more there, and that's why they did the search warrant. Remember, this is a guy who's flushing documents down the toilet. You're not going to go ask him to turn something over. So you have to do a search warrant, and I don't think they're doing a search warrant just simply to sort of button up their investigation. I think they would only do this if they had real evidence of real indication of some evidence.
And to be clear, what I just described is the political argument and what is going through his mind about his political future, which he sees is very much tied to the legal strategy. But you're right that it's really hard to imagine, especially given what we have seen within the DOJ over the past, several years, that they did not do this without it being buttoned up and beyond just the National Archives or the documents that he took, unless it's really relevant to a larger thing.
And I do think the specificity of the raid, knowing to look in the safe, going into his personal office in Mar-a-Lago, indicates that somebody may be cooperating who knows who's close to the Trump circle and would know where they should be looking. And we do know that a handful of folks have gone in recent weeks, but I think this indicates someone senior is cooperating.
It's possible that the family knew all about this. I've seen these signals with Ivanka Trump actually saying, "I've taken the red pill," which is a call out to the paranoid online meme-based Trump extremists. And Donald Trump Jr. has this essentially Iron Cross, Crusader cross on the stock of his gun and displays it prominently. This is really an end of the signaling to the most rabid base that we agree with your paranoia.
I want to make one thing clear as we've been having this discussion here is that we are getting really just one side of this, and it's from Trump world. It is from Trump world. Yes, there was this political journal in Florida that sort of had a hint of this, but it was Donald Trump who made the statement and Donald Trump who tried to control the narrative early on last night. We haven't heard from DOJ.
Well, we haven't heard from DOJ. We have heard from a lot of Republicans who don't know anything about what they're talking about. They are spouting off, following Donald Trump, attacking the DOJ without any idea what the basis for this search warrant is. And it just goes to show you how much control Donald Trump still has over Kevin McCarthy and the Republican Party. And the fact that Kevin McCarthy would issue that statement in such an antagonistic and inflammatory way against Merrick Garland, I wonder if Hunter Biden is charged. Are we going to see him with that same kind of, preserve your records? Of course not. It is completely politicized. He has consistently undermined the rule of law. And we need to see what Merrick Garland actually
Well, let me ask Daniel, because Merrick Garland, he must have known that this type of thing would be coming. Lisa Monaco must have known, the deputy AG must have known this type of thing was coming. Christopher Wray must have known this type of response was coming. So given that they would likely anticipate this response, how much does that raise the stakes for their decision? What bar do you think that they must have felt was met?
I think they had to feel like it was worth it for their investigation. They absolutely knew they were going to get this blowback. But I think Merrick Garland he's been ridiculed by the left for going so slowly. And every time he gets ridiculed, he says, we will follow the facts and the law wherever it leads. And I think he's going to do that. And some people both sides are not going to like it. He's going to get attacked. And I think he probably has just said, you know what, this is my job. I'll get attacked, but I'm going to do it.
And can I just add to that? It's not as if they woke up one.
Well, folks, at least we heard from a litany of stations. We just heard from CNN. The bottom line is that no one knows what is exactly happening right now. Everyone's guessing, everyone's conjecturing. But we're going to keep following this case, and it's a big case. It's politically, from a law enforcement standpoint, mediocre comedian, facts and the law. You will try to follow the facts and the law, even though both right now are sort of in a fog, because no one knows for sure what has happened here, what's gone on, and everyone's guessing. And their guess is as good as the next person. Obviously, some people have a lot of experience that they can guess, and an educated guess. Let's put a hypothesis. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for listening this afternoon. We may come back this evening with a part 2 to this. Watch the channel, Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.